The flight was expected to be uneventful. One after another, passengers boarded, pulling their suitcases through the narrow aisles, scanning for their designated seats. Sunlight streamed through the windows, reflecting off the aircraft as it stood ready on the runway, waiting to lift into the open sky. But what unfolded that afternoon transformed an ordinary journey into a story millions would never forget. At its heart was a little girl named Amara. She wore a plain white dress, her braids shining softly in the light. To fellow travelers, she looked like nothing more than another child on board. What they couldn't have guessed was that Amara was the only daughter of a reclusive billionaire. A man whose immense fortune could move industries, yet who raised his daughter to prize dignity and kindness above material wealth. Before we dive into this unforgettable event, if you believe in compassion, respect, and the power of second chances, please take a moment to like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness so more people can hear life-changing stories like this one. Amara wasn't traveling alone. Her godmother, Celine, was by her side, accompanying her while her father attended urgent business abroad. Celine guided her toward the window seat, Amara's favorite spot, where she loved to watch the clouds drift beneath her like a dream. But when they reached the row, a man in a crisp white shirt and gleaming shoes was already sprawled across the seats. His legs stretched out carelessly, a bag of chips in hand, as though the entire cabin belonged to him. His polished shoes rested arrogantly on the seat marked clearly with Amara's number. Celine politely explained that the seat belonged to the child. The man didn't budge. He smirked, clenched his bag of chips, and leaned back with the air of someone who believed the world was at his command. Amara, though young, stood quietly with composure, her wide eyes observing the scene. Around them, passengers shifted in discomfort, some lowering their gazes to avoid conflict, others whispering nervously. No one intervened. This wasn't simply about a seat. It was about dismissing a child's worth. Amara felt the sting, not because she lacked a place to sit, but because her dignity was being trampled by someone who saw her as powerless. What the man didn't realize was that her father owned corporations that helped keep the very airline in business. But Amara had been raised differently. She wasn't taught to use her father's wealth as a weapon. She had been taught to let her actions, not her surname, speak for her. The tension grew as Celine summoned a flight attendant. The woman arrived, her face torn between duty and hesitation, and asked the man to move. He laughed, refusing outright, insisting he was comfortable and wouldn't surrender his place for a spoiled child. His words cut sharply, echoing through the cabin. Amara lowered her head, her small hands gripping the hem of her dress. But deep inside, something stronger than sadness was rising. A quiet resilience. The murmurs around them grew louder as passengers began filming, sensing the situation might escalate. The supervisor soon appeared, but the man only grew louder, declaring he had every right to sit wherever he wished since he'd bought a ticket like everyone else. He waved his hand dismissively toward Amara, belittling her as just a child. His arrogance made the entire cabin bristle with unease. Then, the unexpected happened. Amara lifted her gaze. She looked straight at the man. Not with fear, not with anger, but with a calm that silenced even the whispers. In a steady, gentle voice, she said, "My father always told me, respect costs nothing, yet it can change everything." The cabin fell silent. Passengers froze, struck by the wisdom radiating from one so young. The man sneered, but for a split second, his smirk faltered. Meanwhile, the captain was informed of the disturbance. Regulations dictated that no flight could depart while unresolved conflicts threatened passenger well-being. The engines powered down. The crew announced a delay. What had begun as one man's defiance had now delayed the entire plane. Frustration rippled through the passengers. Some began shouting that he should be removed. Security was finally called aboard. The man erupted in protest, refusing to leave until he was physically escorted out. His once bold swagger dissolved into humiliation as applause erupted across the cabin. Not just for his removal, but for the courage of the little girl who had faced him with dignity unshaken. At last, Amara sat by her window. She leaned against the glass, sunlight glimmering on the tarmac outside. Celine touched her shoulder gently, whispering how proud she was. Amara only nodded, her eyes distant yet calm. She wasn't proud of the man's downfall. She was saddened that kindness had been rejected so quickly. Even at her age, Amara understood something profound. True wealth is not counted in money, but in the respect you show others. And that day, her quiet strength taught everyone on board a lesson worth more than gold. As the aircraft finally prepared for takeoff, passengers carried with them more than just luggage. They carried the memory of a little girl, in white, who embodied dignity in its purest form. Many would go home and tell their families about her. The billionaire's daughter, whose greatest treasure was not riches, but the richness of her heart. If this story touched you, if you believe in standing up for what's right even when it's uncomfortable, please support stories of kindness by liking this video, sharing it to inspire others, and subscribing so you never miss a story that reminds us of the power of humanity. And before we close, I want to ask, what would you have done if you had been on that plane, watching it all unfold? As the plane finally climbed into the clouds, Amara rested her head against the window, the sky stretching endlessly beneath her. To some, she was simply a billionaire's daughter who had endured public humiliation. But to those who truly saw her, she was something far greater. A reminder that respect, once given, can raise even the smallest voice into a force that steadies the world.